G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and I'm excited to be here today with Adam Marshall from 1833. Now, Adam and I have known each other for quite a few years now, haven't we, Adam?
Yeah, it's been a long time, mate.
Since birth.
Yeah,
Adam's actually my cousin, but he's also an expert in work health safety and has been working a lot in this space, and wanted to share some valuable insights for our clients and our community to ensure that you can navigate the complexities associated with this kind of coronavirus crisis when it comes to managing your team, particularly when they're working offsite in their own homes, and the liability that's extended to making sure that they have a safe working environment. So, Adam, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
yeah. Well, busy, but busy in a good way, not in a negative sense, mate.
That's great, mate. Well, look, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and looking forward to kind of digging into your genius so we can share some of these golden nuggets for our community. So, mate, from a top level, talk to us a little bit about 1833 and your journey, mate.
My journey is quite simple. I started off as an inquisitive young man leaving school and not knowing what I wanted to do when I grew up. So my career path was a series of trial and trial and error. But I started out as an investigator working in the factual investigations field and found myself in the lovely world of insurance. So, and that world of insurance curtailed the personal injury lines like your workers' compensation and CTP, income protection, which then led on to going out and working for a mid-tier brokerage on York Street in Sydney, an insurance brokerage. And throughout that journey, I spotted a bit of a niche or an opportunity within the market where mid-tier businesses were unable to access expert services or expert consulting services, just from those services outpricing themselves and making themselves unable to be reached by that small to medium business owner. So I had a crack at just trying to develop a consulting style business where we could price ourselves in the market, where we could deliver those services in competition to large tier insurance brokerages and risk consultants, where it was accessible for the small to medium market. And mate, here we are some 3.5 years later, and 2 offices, one in Sydney, in St Leonard's, and one up here in sunny Newcastle.
I love that, mate. Fantastic. So what would you be your kind of typical client makeup? Who are you typically working with, Adam?
We're working with anyone from a sole trader tradesman with 1 or 2 either subcontractors or apprentices or full-time employees, through to businesses with $30 to $40 million turnover that employ an exponential number of people. We also provide full outsourced work health and safety and return to work consultancy services for 4 national household brands. So one client has over 1,500 locations throughout Australia and close to 7,500 employees. So if they have an injury or an incident, we manage it for them, fully white labeled back through their business. So meaning that we answer phone calls and emails as though we are direct employees of that national household brand.
Yeah, wow, fantastic. Great. Okay, well, that's a great background, and I think what we're going to talk about today is how this applies. What is the challenges or the problems that SMEs are facing in this current environment? So when we think about all of your wealth of experience and everything that you've done in your consultancy, what would you say are the biggest challenges or problems that most SMEs are facing at the moment?
The biggest problem or the biggest challenge is the uncertainty. And I think that coupled with, it's not just industry specific, Jack. I see that this has touched so many different industries. The first to go was obviously the entertainment business with the cancellation of concerts, festivals, and large scale events of any scale, whether it be even meat stock in Melbourne, the barbecue festival, it was canned quite early. So I see now for a small to medium business owner, you're seeing this effect on large scale brands like Blues Fest in Byron Bay, for example, or Groove in the Moo, the Triple J-esque, to use a bad term, style festival for that 18 through to 30 age bracket. These are household brands. These are household names. They're being impacted. But then I see last night too, being this Sunday evening, the New South Wales Premier announcing that her statement was going to be imminent, but leaving such an ambiguous nature as to who that was going to touch. Now, we see that translate today, and it's impacting things like your local cafe. It's impacting your pub, your bistro owner in the pub who's a contractor to that service. So you can only imagine, and I'm feeling it myself. I mean, this is something that's hasn't been navigated anywhere ever before, only in the countries like Italy and England and all throughout Europe that have managed it before us, and I think they've done a better job. But the problem is the uncertainty, Jack. So I see that the opportunity really lays for the employer to jump on the front foot and be incredibly well communicated or communicative with their employees, because like me and like yourself and like people that will be watching this question and answer session, everybody's unsure. 100%. So if there's no harm in taking a stand and getting in front of your staff. Try with reassuring them that things are going to be okay and communicating with them what you're doing in regards to diversifying your business or your service delivery to be able to ensure longevity through this tough market. But with that uncertainty on the employee side of things, we're hearing terms that aren't often extended to small businesses, and mainly and specifically the working from home opportunity, like or that phrasing. It's such a simple phrase and it's a concept that people get, but as a small business owner myself, it creates some doubt and it creates some fear in that, am I going to lose control of my employee? So there's some big problems there I see in the small business market, not only in New South Wales, but in our nation, where how does an employer allow for this to happen? What can we do to facilitate our workers' wishes to stay at home? And what can we do to ensure that we maintain the risk profile of us as a business in that environment?
100%. And look, I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of businesses that can't be shielded from what's happened here. You rightly said, entertainment industry, hospitality, tourism, even gyms now have had to force to close. And I guess there's a lot of other industries that are trying to hemorrhage the bleeding. And I think that many small businesses are pulling the trigger sometimes a little bit too soon of getting rid of or clearing out their workforce and not looking for other contingency plans because they just don't have the business continuity in place. And look, I think many small businesses and even big businesses have tried to dangle the carrot of flexible working to their team, right?
Work-life balance, Jack.
Exactly right. And I think that for a long time, it's about, we offer flexible working arrangements and you can spend a day at home. But let's face it, most particularly big businesses, when you get some flexibility working from home, most people take the piss, right? How much are you actually working? And that's now translated and magnified to the small business space. Is that how do you actually control your workforce when everyone's working remotely? There's no sense of community, there's no sense of collectiveness, and people are ambiguous on what is expected. So I think hopefully it's something we can work through today.
Pardon?
Hopefully this is something that we can work through in our conversation today of trying to answer some of these questions.
Well, there's a number of things that we can get to, or that I hope to get to, the community and making sure people aren't taking the piss and just using it as an extended couch break and becoming very familiar and Oprah.
100%. So let's talk about more so this work from home and I guess the kind of the broader problems here. So most of these businesses aren't prepared in terms of business continuity. Would you agree?
With communication, such as like what we're using right now, Teams, any number of platforms where you can keep communications open between your team members. So I do see that businesses, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think the businesses could have sustained or weathered such a significant storm 5 years ago. But with social platforms and video conferencing technology being so bloody accessible, I see that it's probably not such a bad time because there's a few options out there in the market that are cost effective, if not very, very cheap. And you can continue that communication. And I see that is probably the first step. Is if your employees are at home, is it just simply that dark world where you don't know whether they've got any clothes on and they're sitting at home on their mobile phone?
Yeah.
What are they actually doing? Are they sitting around the pool, reading the newspaper, pretending to be working and answering their mobile? Well, with technologies, you can generally keep them a little bit more accountable for their productivity and activities throughout the day.
And let's talk about the kind of elephant in the room, Adam, in terms of the risks. I think many small businesses have obviously been so quick to jump to just getting people at home and kind of safe and shielded from the risks that are out there right now. But what about the broader risks and the responsibilities that we have as employers to our staff when they're working from home?
Look, I see that there's a number of different ones, and I'll try and break them up without really preparing this response. We've nailed one, which was there's a social risk. Do your employees feel somewhat disconnected, no longer valued? We know that through any number of business style coaching scenarios that you've been through, that keeping your employees engaged and feeling appreciated will definitely impact and assist with increasing productivity. However, I'm saying that there's a social risk, people feeling disconnected. There is a literal and a legal risk in maintaining your obligations under certain legislation as an employer to ensure a safe system of work for your employees. That certainly extends to their home. Just because they're at home or in their home office, it doesn't mean that the employer's responsibilities under the Work Health and Safety Act cease. So that is probably one of the worst risks I can think of at the moment, because it opens you up to a claim under a number of different pieces of insurance or legislation, and it's an uncontrollable risk because it is, but it isn't. In that, does every employer out there feel immediately comfortable ringing their employee and telling them how to approach safety in their own home? It's a bit of a taboo style topic, I'd imagine. So you've got your social risk, you've got your regulatory risks. I also see in addition to that, and I've slightly touched on it, which is your risk of litigation. And I make that statement purely around the Workers' Compensation Forum, in that history repeats itself. We know that through a number of formats. In times of turmoil and peril, claims go up. Whether that people look for opportunity. Now, not necessarily suggesting that people are going to be fraudulent, but it may bring things to the surface for your business that employees that are in the workplace and feeling engaged and motivated and happy are normally willing to work through without necessarily ruffling feathers or making waves. But now that they're somewhat disconnected or feeling disjointed or even disgruntled, they may want to bring these things to the surface to help them out financially. And I also see that there's communications coming out from state-based insurers that could almost be considered an advertisement, that there's an opportunity to lodge workers' comp style claims.
If we didn't have enough problems, right?
Well, yeah, we've got plenty. And I'm saying this because I guess my professional career has taught me to be that person that looks at the glass half empty, and to prepare clients for the risk and the potential that could be there for them. I'm not saying that it's imminent and that it's 100% certain that every employee out there is going to go and lodge a claim, or that you're going to be visited by a work health and safety regulator because you haven't inspected your employees' homes. But I guess my approach is to make sure that you're aware, because part of the reason why I started this business is because a lot of small to medium employers would answer the questions around, do you have a safety management system? Do you have policies and procedures in place? Their answer was, I didn't know that I needed to.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know, right?
Well, that's correct. And unfortunately, in a lot of the inspectors and regulators' eyes, ignorance is not an answer.
I agree.
Or an excuse.
This is the hard part, right? And this is a good transition to the why. And I think, look, once again, we're in a situation where there are a lot of external factors that we cannot control. And I think it's really important that we don't just dwell on those things and allow ourselves to potentially be blindsided by elements of risk that we could control. Because this is all about risk management, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And if we've got the right risk management strategy, both in our business, but also personally, then that can allow us to avoid some very costly situations. So let's talk about the why, the significance of this. So I guess in your experience, mate, what are the potential repercussions or the worst case scenarios that could come from this that people might not have considered?
It's a very difficult question to answer because it immediately makes me think of the workers' comp style answer, which is unfortunately, sorry, I digress. I'll rephrase my answer. There's two components. There's a work health and safety component and there's a workers' comp. When I go off track with the work health and safety, bring me back and I'll come back and answer the
I'll wrap you back in, mate.
With work health and safety, we have a harmonised legislation in New South Wales. Whilst it's regulated by state-based authorities, it is a national piece of legislation. So your obligations remain there under the Work Health and Safety Act. It's very simple to find out. You can visit your state-based regulators' websites, be it iCare in New South Wales, Safe Work Victoria, very similar anagrams throughout the states and territories. Just simply Google search safety regulator, Vic, safety regulator, TAS, wherever you may be. You're likely to find what that legislation is. Most of them have pretty good functionality as far as searching what are my obligations as an employer. They will give you dot points on those sites. Now, most people wouldn't even know that they exist, but they're there. So that obligation, whilst it may be phrased slightly differently on each of those websites, it remains the same. All employers must, regardless of size, scale or industry, must ensure that they maintain a safe system of work and a safe workplace for their employees, visitors and contractors and the likes. Now, what that means is that if you're going to allow an employee to work from home, you then assume the risk that the tasks they're performing at home are going to be performed in a safe manner. So if we're talking about, probably for the ease of the conversation and without getting too complex, if we're talking about a white collar service delivery business, fee for service, whether you're a bookkeeper, accounting firm or work health and safety consultant, financial advisors, you're going to work someone from home, they're going to sit at a desk. If you're going to allow them to sit on a bar stool with 3 legs and on a laptop that's inappropriately configured, you're going to open yourself up for claims of soft tissue style nature.
Yeah, wow.
So the world of ergonomics, as far as a workstation needing to be set up appropriately, is quite easily researched as well. There's any number of, or infinite number of checklists and the likes on how somebody, or an occupational therapist, would set up a workstation to be the most ideal to limit for soft tissue style injuries. Now, this is the physical environment. The other environment that I like to refer to is the psychological environment. Now, an employee working from home, we're all in trying times. We've all been in seminars and hopefully all had the similar conversations around having an infinite number of tone. So to know and understand our people and who they are and how they respond to certain styles of communication. So where I'm getting at is firing off the one-line email without asking somebody how their morning is in these times of turmoil and uncertainty can certainly be read differently than how it would have been read last Monday.
Yeah.
So these can lead to an employee developing or manifesting something in their head where, am I not doing the right thing, or any guilt because they've just watched 2 hours worth of television. These can compound. So we need to understand to remain engaged so that we can limit the risk of psychological style claims.
Wow. Yeah,
now, the workers' comp answer is that the claims that come out of that and how would people respond. Well, we've got 8 different states and territories in this country, and all of them have a different piece of legislation, and all of them have different measurements for liability testing. So if an employee is going to lodge a claim, that's going to be looked upon differently in the investigative stage in Victoria than it would in Queensland or New South Wales and the likes. So there are 3 simple answers here, and that is that if a claim is made, we'll talk about existing claims. If you're an employer and you've got somebody within your workplace that has a claim currently and a date of injury prior to any of this scenario, and you're unable to keep them at work because of the downturn in operational requirements or whatever your situation is, yes, workers' compensation will continue to pay them even though they're not turning up to do their restricted duties or their amended duties. And it will continue to be paid at the legislative rate, regardless of COVID-19 even existing. So that claim will continue. If an employee is going to lodge a claim because they consider that they've contracted COVID-19 within the workplace or on the way to work, we're going to get to a very sticky scenario because each state and territory would look at that differently. So, for example, New South Wales, in the current climate, I would suggest that we've got to remember that the balance of, the test of liability and the jurisdiction for workers' compensation claims in New South Wales and the country, because it's common law, uses the balance of probabilities as the test. So if it's highly probable that the employee had contact with someone that passed the virus on and it was throughout the course of their duties, very likely that they're going to get paid. Now, when you're looking at the doom and gloom of the news, that worst case scenario is not a 14-day isolation period because they have a cold and a fever and a bit of a virus. The doom and gloom of that is that could potentially be a fatality.
Yeah.
And that fatality could arise out of the course of employment, which means that you have the worst possible case scenario as an impact to your business as a claim. But I'll talk about that from the employer's business sense. And if I look at it from another perspective and we want to look after our employees and make sure that they're fine, those systems are in place to make sure that those people get the care and support and the financial support that they are entitled to within the strength or the length of the legislation that they work within. So that feels like a bit of a monologue, and I hope that I hit the points.
No, I think that's really important, mate, because I think this is a lot of stuff that, for either rightly or wrongly, most of us haven't had time to even think about. We've all, as business owners, have been in this damage control mode, trying to batten down the hatches. And I think many of us have overlooked the transfer of liability and our responsibilities to ensure that, firstly, we can make sure that our staff have the right health and safety parameters and policies to ensure that their workspace is healthy and conducive to minimizing the risks. But then also the transfer of liability. In terms of the workers' compensation side of things, I probably would have never even thought that could potentially be an issue. And look, how unlikely it is doesn't really matter. It's a matter of, this is a risk that can be managed if dealt with properly.
Well, there's 2 things there. Firstly, as you say, you hadn't even thought of it. There's going to be so many more things that pop up because this whole scenario has never been navigated before. So I think the important thing to touch on there is to make sure that you've got the trusted experts in each of their fields around you. Go out, develop your relationship with your local medical clinic that you can speak to them and ask them advice about how to contain things within your environments. Look for the appropriate information on the World Health Organization website's a trusted one, using good medical professionals to provide occupational risk advice. It might not be me, but consult another work health and safety expert or insurance broker. make sure that you can understand. Insurance jargon's still going to be the same. We could go on about business interruption insurance that I've also been exploring today, and people that have been paying that, are they going to be able to claim on their business interruption insurance because of the state government shutdown? I mean, that's a whole nother webinar. But the point being, nobody knows, but you can apply your specific field within its limits. I mean, within your expertise. So making sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people to ask the questions is probably the best risk management tool you can have at the moment.
Well, let's talk about that. So let's talk about the how. This is kind of what people should be asking. Or how do they make sure that they can go from being unconsciously incompetent to at least being consciously incompetent, so then they can make the right decisions around the problems they solve? So for small businesses right now, what are the questions they should be asking?
Well, I think you've got to look at, unfortunately, take the lead of your state communications and the statements that are issued by the government within your state. Unfortunately, our national government hasn't stood up and given a national directive, and we do have, there is conflicting information and directions from the different states as far as what needs to be shut down and what doesn't. But if we're looking at that environment, what needs to be shut down as a service, can I continue to operate, or can I continue to trade with an alternative service delivery or product delivery model? So my business, for instance, our business continuity planning took us through this phase last week with, if there is a shutdown, what happens? Can everybody work remotely? Does everybody have the tools that they need to be able to do what is required of them in their current role? If not, let's work backwards on a rectification matrix as to what is the easiest way of rectifying their problem. If they're worried about using their own mobile phone, have we got an old one in a drawer that we can put another SIM card in? Can we get someone a laptop? Can we set them up remotely? Do they have internet at home? These are the styles of things that we've had to overcome within our business. And look, it still was working through it today with people getting connected up to mobile phones and having their laptops looked at to make sure that they were able to access the remote desktops and the other tools efficiently. So am I being shut down? Clarify that. Can I still deliver my service or my product in an alternative service delivery model? Am I aware of my obligations if I continue to operate as an alternative delivery model? Have you researched it? Have you looked at your local regulatory authority, SafeWork New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, etc.? Have I communicated with my employees in the event that I'm going to let them work from home, what is expected of them, and are we on the same page? Because I talk about the physical and psychological style risks earlier. The significant psychological trigger could be a misunderstanding of expectations on both parties' front. So as the employer, am I expecting my employee to work 15 hours a day from home because they're going to be working at 60% productivity? And then as that same employee, am I expecting that I'm going to work 3.5 hours a day because I've got to look after the neighbour's kids, my own kids, Jeff up the road's asked me to mow the lawn? But making sure that you get in front of that so that you can outline what your expectations are as the employer and understand what your employees' needs are to see if that then needs to be further amended to allow for a mutually convenient scenario. You're not obligated, because we're talking about a significant amendment to an existing employment agreement.
Yeah.
But then again, what am I obligated to do? Source that information from Fair Work or your trusted HR advisor.
And let's talk about the risk side of things, because obviously as soon as this thing unfolded, we immediately reached out to our broker to ask questions about our managing our risks. So what are the questions that small businesses should be asking to their insurance broker or a consultant like yourself to make sure that their manageable risks are being covered?
Okay, so the manageable risks, we'll talk about the working from home thing first off.
Yep.
Do I have the appropriate policies and procedures in place to ensure that I'm meeting my obligations as an employer, to ensure a safe system of work in my employee's house? Now, there's three things that I'm happy to offer to the network: is a working from home agreement, which is an appendix that you would attach to an existing employment contract or agreement, where you outline the expectations of both parties, but there's a documented record of what it is that you're agreeing to. Then, of course, managing that risk in their workplace, or workplace being home. There's a self-assessment checklist that I've developed from a number of different sources, piecing together something that I think is quite transferable across many industry, where people could go through and complete a checklist based on their home office environment, so that they could demonstrate to their employer what they have available at home as far as resources. Now, I've had two varying responses to that style of communication with clients before, or in this last week, and that is, am I then responsible to go out and buy them another chair? Well, the reality is no, you're not, because you can make working from home if your business is not being shut down, working from home is then the employee's choice, I guess. They've elected to work from home. But in the same sense too, if the chair's not being used at work, potentially you can let them take their chair home. Allow them to drive in and pick it up and take it home and use it at home and then return it. There's all sorts of other parts to that agreement that I'll make available, where it talks about the equipment, that if we're borrowing equipment, what are we taking? And we undertake as the employee to return it in the same state that we're taking it.
Yeah.
That it's coming back, if you break your pay, sort of thing. So whilst we don't necessarily have a responsibility to provide them with a new desk and a beautiful big external monitor and a nice Bluetooth keyboard, you've got to be mindful that is it a battle that you need to have? Yeah. Is there something here as a resource that's not going to be used, that the employee can use, and they're still going to be productive for me?
100%. We had one of my team today even say, "Oh, I need another screen for home," and I said, "Just take your screens home with you. It's fine." So it's about just if they're not going to be in the office, then make it as easy as possible for them to do their job.
Yep. And let's not forget here that as a business owner, I've got two primary concerns, and that is the cash flow within my business, to ensure, for myself, for my business and the rest of my board, but for my employees as well. I want to keep their wages being paid. So they can only contribute to that if you allow them to work. So making some out of the box amendments. Would you ordinarily let your employees take their screens home, Jack? Probably not.
Probably not.
But, in this climate where you don't want them to come into the office, but you still want them to turn the work out and answer the phone calls, by all means, can I drop them off for you?
Exactly right.
Yeah. So these are some of the things. So, and then if we get to the part with your broker, speaking to your broker or your consultant around, okay, can I evolve? Can I deliver? Can I stay in open for business, loose term, in the current environment? Am I ensuring the safety of my employees in this new amended scenario or alternative delivery style scenario? The third one is speak to your broker around your general insurances. Why not have a conversation with them about does the suite of policies that I have contain any insurance to assist me in this scenario? Those general insurance policies may contain a business continuity or a business interruption insurance policy that may have some wording in it that allows you to claim for an event of this nature. It may not, but it's not going to cost you any money to ask the question. And especially with I guess the government talking about quarantine and isolation, it certainly changes the way in which insurance policies are read, rather than it being a self-isolation or an elect style. You just because you're someone that wears a foil hat.
Awesome, mate. Well, I think that gives us some good insights. So let's talk about the now. What should people do? So I guess in terms of where you can help, mate. If there's anybody in our network who's watching this, we've spoken through, I guess, the risks, some of those that we haven't even thought about. We've spoken about some of the great tools that you've got access to that you're happy to share. What should be the next steps for small to medium business owners, apart from that kind of action plan that we just spoke about? How can you assist?
How can I assist personally?
Yep.
By all means, anyone's welcome to contact me, either via email or via mobile phone if they've got any questions. But my suggestions would be look at your workforce, sit down and speak with every one of them individually, or if not, push that back out through your lines of management, and have their supervisors talk with them about how they're feeling. Does their current situation allow them to work from home? Look at their leave balances. Jack, as you always say, mate, know your numbers, right? Know your numbers, but relative to your staff, do they have the leave balances available to them that they could take time off over this period? Speak with your financial backbone, your Jackson Millans, your accountant, around how long does my cash flow allow me to last with wages without continuing with an income? So that you really understand, do you need to make a decision about the longevity of this person's employment, or can I have them? Can I advance them leave? Can I allow them to go into a negative leave balance by affording them their 4 weeks annual leave from 2021, for instance, to take now? What will that look like from a leave liability perspective on your business, and how it will impact your cash flow? So sit down with them, qualify what their needs are, but know your numbers so that you can give them the answers on the spot, because we do have to be quite nimble and quite reactive, which is a terrible term to use in a consulting environment, but we need to be able to give the employee some assurances and some certainty there and then on the spot. And leaving it ambiguous or allowing the employee to go away unsure can actually do more damage than good in the long term. So sit down, know what your staff are doing, then develop your plan. Who's going to work from home? When are they going to work from home? Do my systems support everybody being online remotely at once? Speak to your IT people who provide you with your network. Make sure you've got the capabilities for remote access to your systems, or if it's all desktops available, what can we do to ensure the data integrity and the information that we've got out there in remote places? How do I make sure that laptop doesn't get stolen off Jeffrey's desk with all of my IT on it? There's some big risks out there now that I'm talking through it. There's probably a little bit more behind the IT stuff that you need to get some help as well.
Yeah, and I think this is really key, guys. This is about us having our plan A and our plan B. We need to focus on cash being king, but we need to make sure that we manage the risks that we have the ability to manage. So I think the next steps for all of you is that Adam's got some tremendous resources that he's been kind enough to share with us. With questions that I didn't even think of, it just really didn't even occur to me. So we've already fully implemented them into our business. So next steps would be, if you want to get access to the business continuity plan, the checklists, the working from home, the ergonomics checklists, feel free to reach out. Adam will be happy to share all of those with you. And then more than welcome to continue a conversation about making sure that you've got the appropriate plan B, because at the end of the day, this has just proven that anything can happen. And if we can minimize the risks that present themselves, we've got a higher likelihood of being able to see through the other side. So Adam, any final points, anything else you want to leave us with, mate?
I just wish the best for everyone, mate. Like we say, this is a difficult time, and although not favoured, it's certainly interesting the impact that it's having on people, and just hearing the different stories every day. It's a much wider thing than what I originally anticipated. And look, we are here to help. As I said, our business offering and our mission statement isn't about gouging clients for money, and it's certainly providing expert solutions at affordable or at your fingertips as an SME. So please as Jackson's extended the offer, don't hesitate to give me a call. If I don't know the answer, I've got a really good network across all of those businesses that I mentioned before, where I can put you in touch with the right people, be it HR or my cousin here that's a financial guru. And please, just don't be scared to ask questions in this time, guys. You're not expected to navigate a national catastrophe or a pandemic. As a business, as a work health and safety expert, I don't know about pandemics, and I certainly don't know about running businesses to do with steel. So, look, no shame in putting your hand up and ask any time.
100%. This is the time where we come together. Rising tides are definitely going to lift all ships, and we can get through this by sharing everything that we know.
Jack, I'll just mention one more thing. You did say before about the hypotheticals. I think this is a very important time where you leave hypotheticals to do with risk up to professionals, because as a business owner and an operator and the captain at the helm, as a businessman, I would suggest you need to focus on keeping the doors open, keeping the product going. Product is. Don't get yourself bogged up with trying to manage hypotheticals, because you're not going to solve anything. Speak to your professionals about the best way to quickly attack something so you can remain productive.
I think that's good advice, mate. I really appreciate you sharing, mate, and being so generous with your time. Guys, hopefully you've got value from this masterclass. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these to give you the information that you need to make the tough decisions and navigate this time. Adam, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Pleasure, Jack. Thanks for having me.